One of my most successful things that I do is think big, because you can pull off incredible things just by thinking big. I watch people make the mistake of thinking small, and you just end up dealing with low-level people, a bunch of problems, and you get paid small. What I can say is it starts with doing bigger deals and thinking big, because it takes the exact same amount of time for me to do a $75 million deal as it does to do a $5 million deal. It actually takes more time to do the smaller deal. You're working with higher level people, you're raising higher level dollars, your investors are more sophisticated, you obviously get paid way more. Thinking big in real estate is so much easier and so much more important. So it literally just starts with being able to conceptualize something big. One of the largest deals I ever purchased, which was over $60 million worth of land, just happened because I could see what I wanted to build, and it was big, hundreds of thousands of square feet. And it was acres and acres in a big master plan development, and I could just see it. So this is one time where I thought so big and was able to purchase $60 million worth of property. So I'm gonna tell you about that story in this video. I'm Megabelle Epstein, a real estate developer, a wife, and a mother of 4. I've completed 10 different commercial development projects ranging in size from 10 million to 100 million. On this channel, I tell you all about the journey and the lessons I've learned along the way. So I found this property because it was on the fringe of a neighborhood that I lived in, and I lived on top of a hill, and my husband and I were renting. We kind of just decided to move there last minute to save money because I was starting my company and it was taking a lot longer to get out of the ground. And we were about 5 minutes away from downtown Nashville, and you have what's equivalent to like a Central Park in East Nashville. That is this beautiful park where you have a pond and baseball fields and anything you could want, like a massive park. I would have my coffee and look down at the Nashville riverbank, and I noticed that there were all these industrial buildings right along the river, and I just thought, why would you put industrial in this prime location at the bottom of a park and adjacent to the water, and you can get downtown in like 3 minutes? So it was a prime location that was just a bunch of old industrial buildings that I would look down every day. In my mind, I could envision just a much better, beautiful residential hub for people that could walk downtown to work, they could walk and enjoy the park and enjoy the outdoors, and you were right along the Nashville Greenway, which is an organization, a concept that I've supported for many years, which is just basically like getting people to commute via walking or just enjoy being in the outdoors and getting exercise and being healthy. And this location just accomplished all of those things, and I just thought, gosh, if people could like live, work, stay here, have, restaurants, or, children could enjoy the park and live in a more, like a really cool urban environment, but also have the river and the park right there. And I could just see it being unlike anything that was in Nashville. It was just something seemed like such a no-brainer to me. So the first thing I did was I was like, well, I wonder who owns all these buildings. I used to go run by this site every day, not every day, when I was working out. Maybe twice a week, I would go and just stop in one of the active businesses who was the owner. I just say, I'd like to talk to the owner. Someone refers me to him. He's not here right now. It just took months of stopping by to finally reach one owner. Basically just said, no, I'm not interested. I don't know where I would go if I sold my property. And I just planted that seed being like, well, there's always solutions for everything. Like, let me know if you want to sell it. And I'd stop by again and again. And I did that. There were probably 4 different sellers, as I recall. And some of them worked in the business that was using that industrial. And 1 or 2 were just passive investors that I had to track down their cell phone information and requested a meeting with them. The good thing about Nashville is you call someone and you say, oh, hey, I'm a general contractor. I'm interested in your property. A lot of times if it's an investor, they'll be like, yeah, well, come meet me at my country club and have lunch. Like, people are pretty open. So that was lucky. I basically just had to get a hold of every single owner and tell them I was going to buy their property, is how it started. I had no idea how I was going to do that. But I just thought, okay, if I can get everyone on board, then I can have an assemblage. Once I started getting an indication from the people that own the land that they could be interested or they would be interested, I knew I could get them across the line if I had a real backer to buy it. And so I started talking to some of my existing investors about this parcel that I was putting together and seeing if they were interested. The next time my main investor came to town, I just said, hey, like, this is kind of my next thing I'm thinking with. Why don't you come see it? And he was like, whoa, this is really speculative. And I was like, what do you mean? I can totally see this like big mixed use development here. And he was like, yeah, but that's like huge. Where are you going to get the money to do that? And I was like, well, I hope you were going to give it to me. He was like, no. So that made me have to go and try to find another investor. And the good news about it was that it's located in what's called an opportunity zone, which basically just means it's a tax advantageous area of town. I basically started reaching out to opportunity zone investors or investors that are really centered around that. And I finally, over time got one that saw what I saw. And I painted the picture for them enough to convince them to buy it. Oh, there were massive hurdles to do with it. I mean, the investor that ended up buying it had some limitations on the different uses that they could deploy their capital into. One thing is in my vision, I wanted restaurants and office, so different retail shops and it to be walkable and apartments. But when you actually start getting into the nitty gritty and developing it and spending time with architects and, the reality is like a lot of that wasn't as feasible as what I had envisioned, like some river walk district. We had to do a lot of community feedback meetings. This was such a big parcel that of course you want to get weigh in from the neighbors and your community on what they want to see there and what the council person wants to see there. That's all part of getting a project approved to build as a developer. And no matter what, people will always come out of the woodwork after because they think, developers are evil and we're trying to change whatever. And it's like, in one sense, I'm taking something that is like dilapidated industrial and investing in the neighborhood and making it something that's beautiful and walkable, and it's gonna give a bunch of people a wellness-centric home. People are so illogical and make stuff up. It just blew my mind. Like, I was shocked. I was like, well, I envisioned this beautiful community. Of course everybody would want that. I had all this, crazy community feedback, which is just part of the process. And of course, like, there were legitimate concerns that we addressed in our design. But yeah, there was a huge amount of hurdles. I mean, the market changed as we were designing this. So, things that used to pencil for what we paid for the land stopped penciling, and you had to be able to wait out the market. The zoning change was a really controversial thing. There were a lot of hurdles that, I faced with this project. It was a really long journey, but it was something that was really probably the first time where I really sold a huge vision to someone and really got them to understand it. And at that point, they invested. And I think that's one of the key aspects of thinking big and selling your big idea, to really be visionary and really get people sold on that dream. And now it's basically on hold until the market changes back. We did increase the value of the land by getting it entitled, and it kind of is a little full circle. It reminds me of my very first project where there were so many delays that the market we just sort of rode the wave up from it, because since we purchased it, there's been probably the most massive land transaction that Nashville's ever seen occurred just right a few blocks away. And there's a whole huge brand new stadium being built. We had a huge tech company called Oracle move in and build their headquarters just, 10, 20 blocks away from the property. All of these things, I have a feeling it's going to be like some of my other projects where time ends up behooving it, because I do tend to be early with my visions. As the area is developing more, I think that's just adding value to the property, which is a good thing. So one thing I found that is the bigger the vision, the more effort and persistence and perseverance it takes. The bigger game you want to have, you have to put in that estimation of what it's going to take to get that done. This project was something that I dreamed up that is huge, and that I'm still working on. I'm still waiting to, have the results and fruits of all that labor. But no matter what happens with it, I know that there'll be a beautifully designed community that helps Nashville, and that just came from me having an idea and seeing something that I wanted to create. And that's something that I want for everybody, to be able to know that you can build something from nothing just because you decided to or you thought big enough about it. So if you want to hear more about how I've done that in my past, please watch this next video.